So this woman is apparently crazy, and you should never date her. Now, the woman's name is Jody, and Jody's around 25 when the story starts, and she's living in California. And Jody appears to really want a boyfriend. Like, she just wants someone to love. And one day in 2006, she finally gets that opportunity. Because she goes to a work conference in Las Vegas. And there she meets this guy, Travis. And Jody thinks Travis is fine, and Travis thinks she is fine. Now, she's actually dating someone else during this time, but she doesn't seem to care. She now likes Travis, and they hit it off instantly, and they hang out the entire conference. Now, unfortunately, the two of them live in different states. She lives in California, while he lives in Arizona. But that doesn't stop them. She immediately dumps the guy that she's dating to focus all her energy on Travis. Not only that, but Travis is actually a Mormon, and his long-term relationship goal is to marry another Mormon. Well, that's not gonna stop Jody. She straight up converts, like right away. She's just like, well, I'm a Mormon now. Here's actually a picture of her getting baptized into the church. I believe Travis is actually the one who baptizes her. And so from here, Travis and Jody officially start dating in a long-distance relationship. And everything's going well. They're having fun, they're calling each other all the time, they're traveling together, they're doing, all sorts of coupley things. Not only that, but their physical relationship is apparently very spicy. Now, he is a practicing Mormon, so he feels like it is sinful to be smashing before marriage, but I guess that doesn't stop them. They hook up as often as they can, and they talk dirty on the phone and through text, and sometimes they even hook up in the car. Like, damn, wait till you get home. Anyway, you get the point. They get physical, and this apparently causes Travis to feel a lot of guilt, but whatever, he still does it. Now, Travis has a set of friends who try and look out for him. These friends are convinced that Jody is not good for him, and also that she's a little nuts. And to be fair, they're not exactly wrong. Jody will sometimes get jealous and possessive and go through Travis's emails and his social media, and she's just like generally spying on him at all times. Sometimes she even follows him to the bathroom and waits outside to see if he makes a phone call or anything. But I guess it doesn't bother Travis enough to push him away. Because, he even buys her a shirt and a short set with his name on it for Valentine's Day. You see, it says Travis Alexander's. And so I guess it's that kind of relationship. But anyway, then, around 2007, things start to change. So, these two have only been dating for 4 or 5 months at this point. And one day, Jody is snooping through Travis's phone, like she often does, and she sees that he's been texting with other women. Now, she already knows that he's a flirtatious guy, but this time, I guess he crossed the line and they end up breaking up. Now, you would think that this would be the end of it, but no. Jody's crazy ass actually moves to be closer to him. She literally packs up all her stuff and moves from California all the way to Arizona to live just a little bit away from Travis's house. And so they do this whole they're technically broken up, but they still smash thing. And to make it worse, Jody starts helping him out by cleaning his house for money. I guess he just gives her the work. Imagine breaking up with someone and then they just show up at your house like, hey, can I vacuum your living room? Alright, but anyway, to be fair to Travis, he actually does try and move on and date other women. However, strange things keep happening in his life. Like his tires get slashed and his social media gets hacked, his journals go missing, which is probably the result of Jody acting crazy. And one time she wants to get into his house, but she doesn't have access, so she just straight up crawls in through the doggy door like a freaking psychopath. But anyway, here's where their on-again, off-again relationship starts to go wrong. Through all of this, Travis and Jody continue to smash, even though he's trying to move on. But Jody, she's not trying to move on. She wants Travis back, and she wants him all to herself. Regardless, he's actively going out on dates with other women, trying to find someone new. And eventually, he does meet one particular nice woman, and he thinks she is fine. While Jody, she decides to move away from Arizona back to California and live with her grandparents. But despite not being in Arizona anymore, she still wants to be with Travis. Like, she still calls him, she still stalks his social media, and she still just keeps showing up in his life. All the while, they seem to keep up the occasional phone sex thing too. And so now we're in like 2008. And around this point, Jody finds out about a trip Travis is going on to Cancun, Mexico. I guess it's like a yearly company trip, and I think he's allowed to invite people to go with him. And he decides to not invite Jody to go with him. But you know who he does invite to go with him? That other woman that he likes. And so Jody finds this out, and she's apparently all pissed off. And she is not gonna let him run off to Mexico with some other woman. So she goes, and she steals a pistol from her grandparents. And then, several days before Travis is set to leave for Cancun, Jody packs the gun in her bag. And then she suddenly just shows up at Travis's house to say hi. Now by this point, Travis and that other woman are still going to Cancun, but they're just going as friends. I guess they ultimately decided not to date. But I don't know if Jody knows this or if she even cares. And so Travis lets her into his place. So they're hanging out. And one thing leads to another, and they start smashing. And they're apparently having a real good time, and Travis has gotten a new digital camera, and so they decide to take some spicy photos of one another in the bed and apparently in the shower too. Now, it's at this point that Jody decides that it's time to make sure that no other woman can have Travis, and that she needs to unalive him. And so she gets a knife that I guess she had hidden somewhere. And boom, she starts stabbing him over and over and over again. She actually stabs him 27 times. Then, to make sure the job is finished, she cuts his throat. Then, I guess to really make sure the job is finished, she shoots him in the head. Now, here's the really wild part. Remember that digital camera that he had? Now, I don't know if she took the pictures on purpose or by accident, but a picture is taken of Travis while he's dying on the bathroom floor. And obviously, I can't show you the picture, it's awful, but it exists. Then, once Travis is unalived, Jody drags his body to the shower to wash it? I guess she's trying to clean up his body and maybe stage the crime scene. I'm not sure what her full plan is. But afterwards, she tries to mess up the digital camera, and she throws it in the washing machine along with all the bed sheets. Then she just leaves the place, like nothing happened, like she didn't just murder the guy she's in love with. Anyway, so eventually police investigate all this, and immediately Travis's friends bring up the fact that he has this nutty ex-girlfriend, Jody. So of course, they search Travis's place, and along with other evidence, they find the digital camera with all those spicy pics on them. And these pictures are time-stamped, placing her at the scene of the crime. And so, bam, they arrest Jody. Here's her mugshot. And ultimately, she goes to trial, and she's found guilty, and she's sentenced to life in prison. So this insane woman ran over some homeless guys in order to collect some insurance money. Now the woman's name is Helen, and Helen is 66 years old when the story starts, living in Los Angeles, and this woman is straight up evil. She's a longtime con artist who wants nothing more than to make money in the most sinister way possible. And one day, in 1997, she comes up with a diabolical plan to get paid. She partners up with her friend, this woman, Olga, and together they concoct this scheme to take a life insurance policy out on some random homeless person and then eventually unalive them with their car to collect the money. And so they volunteer at a local church, a church known for feeding the unhoused, because, they're trying to meet some homeless people. And there they meet this guy, Paul, and Paul is the perfect target for their scam. And so Helen and Olga, they befriend Paul, and they pretend that they want to help him out. And they get him set up with an apartment, and they help him pay his rent and some of his bills. And Helen and Olga are able to pay for all this because they already have some money. They're not poor. And so it seems like they aren't pulling this insurance scam only for the money. It's like they're partly doing it for the thrill. But anyway, while Paul is under their care, they get a rubber stamp made of his signature. That way they can sign papers for him without him ever knowing that they did. And so signing papers is exactly what they do. And they take out a bunch of life insurance policies in Paul's name, and of course, they name themselves as the beneficiaries. Now, this is a long con, and they can't take out life insurance on someone and then immediately unalive them. That would look way too suspicious. So instead, they wait. And 2 years go by, and it's now 1999. And finally, they're ready to unalive poor Paul. And so one night, they give Paul something, sedatives or alcohol, we don't know, but something that makes him pass out. Then they take him to a secluded back alley where no one is around, and they place him on the ground. Then they get in their car, and they start it up, and boom, they run over him. That's how they kill him. And so after that, they leave him there, and sometime later, police find him in the alley, unalived, and the whole thing looks like a hit and run, so I guess they just rule it a hit and run. And he's homeless, so there's no family there to even challenge this narrative. So then, of course, after this ruling, none of the insurance companies suspect anything nefarious happened, and they all end up paying out Helen and Olga around $600,000. And this is great money for them. However, they seem to think that they can actually get more. And so they try again. They actually try a few more times. And one of those times, Olga spots this unhoused looking guy on the street, and she approaches him, and she's like, "Hi, are you homeless?" And I guess the guy's like, "Yeah." And she tells him that she works with an agency that can set him up with money and a place to live. And so this dude's like, "All right." And soon, she's having him fill out paperwork. And this paperwork is asking him all kinds of questions. And bro, he doesn't really like this. It feels very intrusive to him. And as they file an insurance policy on him for $800,000, suddenly this dude is like, "Nah, this is all weird." And he freaks out and he declines all their help. So this guy's lucky he gets away. But Helen and Olga aren't done. This seems to only make them want to pull this con off even more. But this time, they're going to try and get more money. A lot more money. So in 2002, they decide to try again. They go back to that same church they went to the first time. And there, they meet this homeless guy. His name's Kenneth. And of course, they run their same old scam with him. They approach him and they say that they can set him up with money and a place to live. And soon enough, he starts trusting them. And they move him into an apartment and they start paying his bills. Now, Kenneth, he's a former screenwriter with some severe mental health issues. And allegedly, Helen and Olga lure him in with some kind of screenwriting deal or promises of a screenwriting deal because Kenneth believes he's working for their production company, writing on some sort of like TV or film project. I don't know, it's whatever lie they told this poor guy. And so they get him to agree to fill out a life insurance policy as an act of good faith. They also get another rubber stamp, this time of Kenneth's signature. And using this, they take out a total of 18 life insurance policies on this guy, worth around $5 million. And so after that, they wait a while so that these policies can settle and, so that they don't look suspicious. And then, finally, one day, they're ready to unalive Kenneth. So one night, they get him really high on sedatives and alcohol, just like they did with Paul. Then they put him in their car and they drive him to a secluded back alley and they push him out. And I guess he's just like lying there on the ground and they put his bike next to him because I guess he has a bike. And they stage it to make it look like he was in the alley fixing his bike when some random driver just came along and accidentally hit him. So then they get back in their car and boom, they run him over. Twice. And this, of course, unfortunately, unalives him. And so their devious plan worked again. He's gone. And all these ladies have to do now is wait for their insurance money. So it looks like they've now gotten away with this scam a second time. Until... Here's the thing about all this. Helen and Olga, they took out a lot of insurance policies on their victim this time. Apparently 18 total. Now before, they waited 2 full years between when they took the policies out and when they unalived their victim so as not to look suspicious. And they did the same thing this time. They waited 2 full years on all the policies. Except for one policy. They go to cash in one policy and it's just under the 2-year mark. And apparently, life insurance claims that are cashed in under 2 years, they can be investigated for any reason. And that is where this guy steps in. We'll just call him Agent. An agent, he works for the insurance company, and he opens an investigation into all this. And so agent, he starts looking into it, and he notices that some of these things aren't adding up. Like the bike tire Kenneth was allegedly fixing wasn't actually flat. So why was he fixing it? Plus, there's oil all over all his clothes, like someone drove over him slowly rather than crashing into him and knocking him to the side, like, what you would suspect would normally happen. Just little stuff like that. And so Agent reaches out to Helen and Olga, and he tries to set up a meeting with them, but they won't talk to him at all. They're acting real shady. And so Agent, he starts realizing that this claim of theirs, it isn't real. And so he reaches out to the police to get their take on it. And he starts explaining all this to one of the officers about how a homeless guy was run over by a car. And coincidentally, one of the officers there remembers a similar case from years before, where a homeless guy had been run over by a car. Paul's case. And so immediately, Agent cancels Helen and Olga's life insurance policies. Meanwhile, Helen and Olga, they're pissed that their policies were canceled. All that hard work went to waste. And so they decide to try again. They go out and they find yet another homeless guy. And soon enough, Olga is filling out paperwork with this new guy, but this time the police are on to them. And so, bam, they arrest Olga. Here's her mugshot. Also, bam, they arrest Helen. Here's her mugshot. And they both go to trial, and they are both found guilty, and they both get life in prison. So this guy really wants to win his wife back, and you're not going to believe the way he tries to do it. Now, the guy's name is Daniel, and Daniel's about 43 when the story starts, and he's living in Colorado, but the dude has a big problem. His wife doesn't love him anymore, and she wants to leave him. Now, his wife is this woman, Christelle. And Christelle is a very sweet person, but she's done with this marriage. This has been a long time coming. But Daniel, he doesn't want her to leave, and he ain't about to let that happen. So one day in 2023, he comes up with an insane plan to scare her into staying with him. He's going to create some fake identities and use them to stalk and harass her, thinking that she'll be afraid and she'll turn to him as a protector and that she won't leave him. So he gets to work. First, he decides to impersonate one of Christelle's old ex-boyfriends from 20 years ago. That ex-boyfriend is this guy, Jack, and he makes a fake email account and he gets a burner phone. So Daniel, pretending to be Jack, sends his first stalkery message to his wife Christelle over text. Basically, he's saying he's gonna be in town soon and asking if she wants to hook up. And so Christelle sees this text and she just ignores it. So the next day, Daniel, pretending to be Jack, sends her even more texts. But they're like angry ones. And Christelle sees them and she ignores these too. But Daniel, he's not about to give up. He keeps going. He's sending creepy messages. And a few weeks later, he stages a candid photo of himself in a parking lot, and he sends it to her to make it look like Jack is now stalking him too. He also sends her messages, pretending to be Jack, and he tells her that she's being watched. Like he says, "I noticed your license plate is expired," or "I saw you go to the dentist today." And if that isn't bad enough, then he decides to get even more creative. He posts an ad on some horny classified website, and he puts Christelle's phone number on it so that random people start texting her, and she starts getting dirty, explicit messages and photos from strange men in response to this ad. And so by this point, Christelle, she can't ignore this anymore. She's feeling super afraid and paranoid about all of this. So she goes to the police. And she gives them a detailed spreadsheet showing every time that she's gotten an unwanted message from her stalker, who she believes is Jack. But here's what's crazy. Daniel talks to the police too. And of course he doesn't tell them that he's the one secretly harassing his wife. No. He doubles down on his lies, and he tells them how all this stalking from Jack is just making him paranoid and anxious too. And a few weeks go by. And for whatever reason, Daniel decides to escalate things again. He hits up his wife again, pretending to be Jack. This time, he basically says, "Get rid of your husband, and then we can be together." Now, I don't know what Daniel's long-term plan was with this whole thing, Because if he keeps harassing his wife and he keeps escalating things, eventually the real Jack will come forward and he'll probably say something like, none of this was me. But I guess Daniel isn't thinking of these things, so he just keeps this whole act up. And eventually, police get warrants to investigate the phone numbers and email addresses that the messages are coming from. And they hit up Google and TextNow and Verizon, but weeks go by and these companies don't respond. And so I believe when police start to investigate the source of these messages, that is what pushes Daniel over the edge, because he knows that they're eventually going to trace all this back to him. And so here is where the story gets dark. Because Daniel decides that now he's going to murder his wife Christelle and let Jack take the fall. So another month goes by, and Daniel knows that if he's going to unalive Christelle, he'll need an alibi. So when she isn't paying attention, he takes her phone and he schedules text messages to himself and to other people so that they look like they're coming from Christelle at certain times of the day, so that it looks like he was texting back and forth with her instead of murdering her. He also disables all the security cameras from outside the house, and he puts blue tape over their Ring doorbell camera so as, not to accidentally record himself committing this crime. Then a day passes, and so today is the big day. It's time to pull off this murder. So it's early in the morning, and Christelle leaves the house to drop their kids off at school. Then she comes back home and she parks her car in the garage. And Daniel is there. He's waiting for her. And suddenly, boom, he jumps out and he hits her over the head with a blunt object. And this knocks her down. Then he takes a kitchen knife and bam, he stabs her. And this, unfortunately, unalives her. Then Daniel leaves the house and he goes to work like it's a normal day. And while he's there, he calls police. And he says that he hasn't heard from his wife in a while and he requests that they do a welfare check on her.
Hi there, my name is Dan Krug. I don't think this is an emergency, but this feels really weird.
Okay.
My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
Okay.
We've had threats against us.
And so police, they send an officer out to their house to check on Christelle. And when the officer gets there, he's looking around and he looks into a window into the garage, and that is where he sees her. And so police, they let Daniel know, and he comes home from work and he pretends to be all upset and he gives an Oscar-worthy performance at seeming devastated that his wife was attacked by someone. So now police are like, yeah, we gotta find this Jack guy. I mean, he was stalking her, so clearly he's responsible for this. And they get a warrant for his arrest. And they actually do go and find him, but not in Colorado where all this is happening. They actually find him all the way over in Utah, where he lives. And in their investigation, they discover that Jack wasn't in Colorado at the time of the murder, and he couldn't have made the 8-hour drive from Utah in time. It would have literally been physically impossible. So Jack is fully cleared as a suspect. So then police turn to the only other man in Christelle's life, her husband, Daniel. And they start questioning him. And Daniel, he starts making himself out to be the victim. He says that his marriage was deteriorating, and he admits that he and Christelle were sleeping in separate bedrooms, and that he says that he was actually the one asking for a divorce. And so now, of course, Daniel is thinking that he's successfully looking like a victim, and this whole thing is just gonna blow over, and he's about to get away with murder. Until police reach back out to Google, TextNow, and Verizon. Now, these three companies still haven't responded to the warrants that were filed months ago. But this time, because a murder was involved, they get back to police within like an hour. And they send them back a bunch of data and call records, and police look at it and they see that a lot of these harassing texts and emails were actually sent from the IP address of where Daniel works. Not only that, they see that the burner phone that was used was bought with a gift card registered to Daniel. So, only 2 days after Daniel murdered his wife, bam, police arrest him. Here's his mugshot. And he goes to trial and he's found guilty on all charges and he's sentenced to life in prison. So this guy unfortunately crashes out and gets violent over some Chinese food sauce. Now the guy's name is Glenn, and Glenn is 49, living in New York City, and Glenn really loves Chinese food, and he especially loves the duck sauce that comes with it. And duck sauce is that orangish yellow sauce in the packets, it looks like this. And so he loves that sauce. He'll do anything for it. He'll even hurt people if he doesn't get enough of it. And so one night in 2021, he calls in a takeout order at a local Chinese restaurant called the Great Wall. And as part of his order, he wants the extra duck sauce packets. So the workers say, of course, and they make up his order and they throw the packets in the bag. And so later, Glenn gets there and he gets his food and he pays for it and he leaves. Then, I guess he gets home and he opens the bag and he checks for the duck sauce packets. And of course, they're in there, but there aren't as many as he wanted. And Glenn, he's not the most stable guy, so he loses his mind. So he drives back to the restaurant, he busts in and he starts yelling like, I asked for extra duck sauce! And keep in mind, he just left the place like 20 minutes ago and he's already back. And so he starts yelling like, I asked for extra duck sauce! And the workers are like, we put it in the bag. And he's like, it's not enough! Then they offer to give him even more, but that still doesn't calm him down. And he's like yelling at all the workers that they screwed up his order, and he apparently starts yelling racist stuff at them. And if that isn't crazy enough, he starts demanding that he return the order and they give him a refund. However, this is all happening in 2021. So this is happening during the pandemic, and the restaurant won't take back the food due to stricter COVID regulations. Plus, Glenn he's just being irrational. And this pisses Glenn off even more. And he calls the police, and I assume he's like, they didn't give me enough duck sauce, and now they won't give me a refund. So now police gotta come and intervene, and they start asking questions, and the workers explain about, the pandemic rules and how they can't take orders back now, and Glenn gets even more upset, and he storms off and he leaves. Now, normally that would be where the story ends, but Glenn is not a normal guy, and he's not gonna let this go. He can't. So he decides he's gonna get revenge on these employees. And so one day he starts calling them at work, and he'll get the workers on the phone and he'll threaten them, and he does this shit a lot. Sometimes he even calls 911 on the restaurant for no real reason. Now, one of the guys who works at the place, his name is Jan. And Jan, he's a delivery driver and he's been working there for 20 years. And about a month later, after Glenn's initial dispute over the sauce, Jan is at work and he's getting deliveries ready or whatever, and he walks outside and boom, he sees Glenn. And Glenn is wearing a black mask, but Jan knows it's him. And he can see him using a knife to scratch up one of the workers' cars. And so obviously Jan and some workers, they go over there to confront him and they're like, what are you doing, bro? Stop. And Glenn turns to them and he's like, I have a gun. Be careful. This is the last time I'm gonna tell you. Then Glenn starts walking away to his car. And of course, Jan and the other workers, they follow him. And when they get to his vehicle, they confront him like, bro, what the f***'s your problem? And this escalates. And they start pushing and shoving him. And he pushes back and some of the workers end up wrestling Glenn to the ground. Then one of them actually pulls down Glenn's mask so they can get a photo of his face, while the others take photos of his car and his license plate. Once they get that, they let him go and he gets away. Now, here's where Glenn starts to get violent. By this point, all the workers at the restaurant, they know Glenn, they know who he is, he's the crazy duck sauce guy, and they know he's a problem. And they repeatedly call the police and report him. But I don't know why police don't do anything, I don't know if they can at this point, maybe they're still investigating, I don't know, but they don't do anything. But a few more weeks go by, and it's winter, so it had recently snowed. And one night, one of the restaurant workers is out in front of the business shoveling snow, and suddenly, out of nowhere, boom, Glenn shows up, and he's holding a pistol. And he points it at the worker and he says, how's your car? Remember me? I will unalive your entire family. And this worker, look, he of course freaks the hell out and he runs away, and he runs back inside and he calls the police. Meanwhile, Glenn, he's still outside. And he goes to the parking lot and he finds a car that belongs to one of the workers and he slashes the tires. Then he flees before police can get there. And so now the workers at this place, they're terrified. This crazy duck sauce guy, he could show up again at any moment. And so a few months later, it's now 2022. And Glenn, he's ready to strike again. And one night, he starts driving past the restaurant, just back and forth, creeping for like 2 hours. He drives by 7 times during this period, like a crazy ex-boyfriend or something. Now, Jan is actually working that night. And at some point, the restaurant gets a delivery order. And so they cook it up and they hand it off to Jan, and he gets on his scooter to drive and drop it off. Here's the thing though. Glenn is there in his car watching, and he sees him leave the restaurant and he starts following him. And so Jan drives for a while and he gets to the location and he makes the delivery, then he leaves. And while he's driving back, boom, he stopped at a red light. And so he's sitting there waiting for the light to change, and Glenn, I guess he's still following him, and he puts his car in park, and he gets out, and he walks up to him, and he pulls out a pistol, and he points it at him, and Jan suddenly sees him, and he gets scared because, it's the crazy duck sauce guy, and he has a gun. And so he quickly starts trying to back away on the scooter, but Glenn pulls the trigger, and blam! He unalives him right there on the street. Then, Glenn gets back in his car and he drives away. Now, when this news gets around, people are obviously devastated. And the police are now involved and they're investigating the whole thing. And Jan was working. So of course, police talk to his coworkers at the restaurant. And the workers are all like, "It's gotta be that crazy duck sauce guy. I'm telling you, it was him." And so police, they get a warrant and they end up searching Glenn's apartment. And first of all, they discover that he's straight up a hoarder. Like, here's a picture of the inside of his apartment. That is disgusting. And here's another picture, and you can see there's just shit everywhere. Ugh. But while they're searching through all this trash, they open up his fridge and they can see that it's absolutely crammed full of all sorts of condiments, but especially a whole bunch of those packets of duck sauce. He apparently hoards duck sauce too. Like, this guy has a serious problem. And so anyway, eventually police get enough evidence against him, and so bam, he gets arrested. Here's his mugshot. But it's not quite over, because he gets charged with a bunch of stuff, including Jan's murder, and he's facing potentially life in prison, but he gets out on bail. And one day, I guess he decides he doesn't want to go to prison, and he gets a pistol, and he unalives himself.